Good morning. Today is Wednesday, April 8th. This is the 8th of our online presentations. We're going to cover Algebra 2 IXL Skill E6, and that one is that you'll be able to solve a system of equations using substitution. So what I've done here is I've actually listed the rules for substitution so that you will have a guide to go by. So the first one is you're going to isolate the variable and you're going to plug the result into the other equation and solve for one variable. And then you're going to plug the previous result in equations and solve for the other variable and then state the solution. All right, so that's basically how it works. And now we're going to go over several examples so that you'll better understand what's going on. So let's go to, before we go, how could I forget? Make sure, because this is online, that you are actually using a sheet of paper with a plastic cover on it so that you can go ahead and answer your questions one at a time. Remember, online work does not work well when you are doing it in your head. Write it down, and particularly in this area, systems of equations, as you know, that's very difficult. It's very easy to make a mistake. Use the paper. Use your graphing calculator. Do not be afraid to use both of these. You need to do that to be successful and to get your minimum score of 85. Okay, so let's go on to our first problem. So we're going to solve this system of equations using substitution. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to number these equations. So the first one, y equals 8, is going to be equation 1, and the second one, negative 5x plus 2y equals negative 14. That's going to be our equation 2, and we're going to use those numbers again as our trail of breadcrumbs so that we don't lose track of what we're trying to do. All right. With step 1 here, we're going to isolate the variable. And in this case, if you look at the first equation, the variable is already isolated for you. Y is by itself. So I'm going to just write that down. The variable y is already isolated in equation 1. All right, so since we have that information, then we're going to go on to step 2, and step 2 says to plug the result of step 1 into the other equation and solve for one variable. Okay. All right, so we're going to plug 8 into the equation. And the equation we're going to plug it into is equation 2, because 8 was, of course, part of equation 1. All right, so that means I'm going to, let me rewrite equation 1. It's y equals 8. And then we're going to substitute 8 for y in equation 2. All right, so now that we've got that written out, now we're going to go ahead and substitute 8 for y in equation 2. So here's equation 2. It's negative 5x plus 2y equals negative 14. And when I say that we're going to substitute 8, that means quite literally this 8 is going to replace this y in the second equation. So let me rewrite that equation 2. So equation 2 rewritten, that's negative 5x plus 2 times and then in this case it's going to be 8 because we're putting 8 in for y, and that equals negative 14. So now we're going to simplify. And that means we are going to multiply the 2 times the 8, so we get equation 2 equals negative 5x plus 2 times 8 is 16, and that equals negative 14. All right? So then our next job is we're going to undo. We want to get x by itself, so we have to first subtract 16 from both sides. All right, so we'll go ahead and subtract 16 from both sides. And when we do that, of course, the 16 on the left cancels, and you're left with negative 5x equals, and negative 14 and negative 16, if you add those together, that's negative 30. Okay. And so now, of course, you want to get the x by itself, so you're going to divide both sides by negative 5. All right, so we'll divide by negative 5. And, of course, negative 5 divided by negative 5 cancels. You get x equals negative 30 divided by negative 5, which comes up to positive 6. So that is our variable that we solve for, our x equals 6. Okay? All right, so we're going to go on to the next page, and we're going to have to carry some of this information forward for step 3. So in step 3, since equation 1, if you go back here and you look at equation 1, was already solved for y. If you look at it, y equals 8. Then we don't need to solve for y. We just skip the step. So let me write that down. So you're going to skip that step. All right, and so the solution is x is 6 and y is 8. Now you'll notice that I did this without a calculator. The next particular problem that we do, which is problem B here, it's a little more involved, and I think that it warrants us actually using our graphing calculator. So I'm going to pull my graphing calculator over here and have it available for use. Put it up here at the top. And so if you look at this next 2 equations, and we're going to label them equations 1 and 2. Equation 1 and 2, if you notice, neither of them is solved for x or y. So we're going to have to go through all these steps like they were meant to be done. So we're going to look at which of these equations we want to start with. And it looks like equation 2, if you'll notice, it has x all by itself. So if I were to add 2y to both sides, I would have this equation solved for x. It would be x equals 2y minus 14. Okay, that's what I'm going to do. And then I'm going to take that information and I'm going to plug it into equation 1. So let's start out. We're going to solve equation 2 for x. So that means we're going to take equation 2 which is x minus 2y equals negative 14. And we are going to add 2y to both sides. So I'll do that. I will add 2y. And I'm going to get, for my equation 2, x equals, this is equation 2 again, 2y minus 14. So now I have the result. This equation 2 is now solved for x. So we're going to then plug that result into the other equation and solve for one variable. Okay, so I've got equation 1 again. Equation 1 is negative 8x minus 10y equals negative 18. And equation 2 was x minus 2y equals negative 14. Now notice again, that's equation 2, and it's set up, I screwed that up. Let me rewrite that. It should be set up, solve for x. So we want x equals 2y minus 14. Okay? And I'm going to bring that down. Let's just make it a little cleaner. So my equation 2 again is x equals 2y minus 14. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this information here and I'm going to put it in up here. So it's going to go up here. I'm sorry that that's a little bit of a messy explanation, but the 2y is literally replacing the x in equation 1. So we'll rewrite equation 1 now. And so equation 1 is going to be x equals start that again, negative 8 times, and then instead of x, we're going to put in 2y minus 14 minus 10y equals negative 18. So now we're going to simplify by distributing. Okay? So we're going to distribute the negative 8 to the 2y, and we're going to distribute it to the negative 14. So our equation 1 becomes 2 times negative 8, which is negative 16y, plus negative 8 times negative 14. Now, let's see here. So negative 8, let's clear this, negative 8 times negative 14 times, and I think I have to put this in parentheses, negative 14, and so I get 112. So you notice how I put this in parentheses because these are two negative numbers. If I tried this without the parentheses, you would end up with an error message. So that's positive 112. So negative 16y plus 112 minus 10y equals negative 18. All right. So we're going to combine like terms. So you'll notice you have negative 16y, negative 10y. That becomes negative 26y. I'll put that in red. Negative 26y plus 112 equals negative 18. All right, and so now we're going to undo. And that, in this case, means we're going to subtract 112 from both sides. Okay? And so when we do that, we're going to subtract 112. Let me do it this way. Minus 112 minus 112. The 112 and the negative 112 on the left cancel, and you end up with 26y equals, and this would be, well, let's use our calculator, negative 18 minus 112. This, in this case, you can use minus, and you get negative 130. So negative 130, and we're running out of room a little bit here, but I think I can squeeze it in over to the right. So looks like we're going to divide by both sides by 26. And when you do that, 26y divided by 26 and negative 130 divided by 26. And put the answer over here. Let's see. Let's negative 130. We already have that down, so we'll take that answer and we'll divide that by 26, and we get looks like negative 5. Oh, it's negative 30 divided by negative 26. Let's rewrite that. So negative 130 divided by negative 26. And so that's positive. Answer is positive 5. Okay? So negative 130 divided by negative 26. Negative 130 divided by negative 26. Answer is 5. So y equals 5. So we now know what y equals, okay? But we aren't quite done. As I said, this is a little involved. So we come to our last page. So we're going to plug the result from the previous step into one of the original equations and solve for the other variable. So in this case, I'm going to go to equation 2. So equation 2, that was x minus 2y equals negative 14. Now let's just go back and look at our previous screen and make sure we wrote that right, because we can always make mistakes very easily when we're doing these things. So here's x minus 2y equals negative 14 equals negative 14. So the two equations match up. And so now that we've done that, we're going to substitute. What do we have to substitute? We want to substitute y here for 5. So substitute for y. Because again, y equals 5. So here we have it down here. Okay, so that means that I'm going to rewrite this equation 2 as x minus 2 times 5. And that's going to equal negative 14. All right? And so that gives you x, let's see, negative 2 times 5 is negative 10. So x minus 10 equals negative 14. And then we just need to add 10 to both sides. And of course, when we do that, the 10 and negative 10 cancel, and we get x equals negative 14 plus 10, which is negative 4. Okay. All right. So now we have what x equals, and we also have what y equals. We said y equals 5. So our solution is x equals negative 4 and y equals 5. Y equals 5. Okay. So we've got it all down, and we're done. Okay, so again, use your calculator. Make sure you take these steps slowly. It's easy to make a mistake. I want you again to get to 85 as your minimum score. Have a great day. And oh, one last thing. I have not heard back from the board yet. It just may be that they had to go through the board's minutes, and board's minutes go on for several hours, and so I'm sure that they're trying to get that sorted out. As soon as I hear something, I will send you an email. Talk to you later. Thank you. Bye-bye now.